Gentlemen and female gentlemen, I'm knee-deep in the D&D lore right now, I'm not even gonna lie, and we are starting on the Forgotten Realms lore. Apparently there's this massive playlist someone in my chat showed me. It is created by an individual that goes by Jorfdan, and he basically goes through all of the lore of the Forgotten Realms universe, which is a massive balls-deep lore dive. So right now is the fall of Netheril. Apparently that's a place in Forgotten Realms, and I'm excited to see what it's all about. I love this world so far, so let's keep going. All lore will be absorbed on the channel. Let me know other lore you want me to cover. Let's see what we got.
Previously on a very special Forgotten Realms Explained. Hey, fellow Netheril citizen, want to learn magic? Boy, do I! Wait, so you're not calling yourself a wizard anymore? No, I'm an arcanist.
Right, okay. Valid.
I know, let's build some giant magical batteries and then power some quasi-magical items. Sounds great!
Based?
You can't cut off the top of a mountain and create a floating city. Holy crap, you just cut off the top of a mountain and created a floating city.
That's crazy. So Netheril is a giant floating city held up by magic in the Forgotten Realms. So I'll tell you my experience with Forgotten Realms. My experience with the Forgotten Realms is essentially I read a couple of the Drizzt books back in the day. I don't remember any floating cities.
Are you freaking kidding me?
What's this? A stolen treasure map?
And now, the conclusion.
Hello everybody, Jordan here, the PH is silent. Today we continue our story of magic with the final chapters of the Netherese Empire. Spoiler.
She's actually going through the entire lore, through the books and everything. That's insane.
It's a fallen empire, so yes, it fell. And we left off with the Netherese learning to harness the power of their magic batteries called the Mythalar, which I realize I'm now saying weird. Mythalar, there. That's better.
All right.
The Mythalar, which allowed them to levitate mountains and charge magical weapons and armor with a field around it. Now, the moment the first floating city ascended into the sky and started wandering across Faerun, Netheril was divided into two countries.
Oh my god. This is a giant floating city that was floating around and wandering the globe. That's why they have these chains. They literally have to anchor this island to the ground. That's some crazy world building.
Subtly named,
Hey yo, Mr. White, magnets!
High and Low Netheril. Now, High Netheril was the floating cities, and Low Netheril was the remaining land below. High Netheril was royalty and the most magic of magic humans.
Based classist society where the elites are on top? Love that, love that. That reminds me so much of real life.
Low Netheril encompassed the lesser arcanist, towns of people, and the remaining barbarian tribes that roamed the northern and southwestern plains. So at this time period, the Netherese were pushing the boundaries of magic. They were crossing into other planes, creating new spells and magical items.
Dope, love that.
Even to the point of going into other crystal spheres, which I mentioned earlier in another video. That is part of the Spelljammer setting, leaving the sphere that holds Terrell and exploring other universes, other worlds entirely.
There's a multiverse in D&D. Dude, I'm telling you, man, I thought D&D was just like wizards and shit. Like, I thought it was wizards and creatures and dragons. There's dimensions and worlds and space. All right, well, that's why we're diving in, man.
They were the first to make contact with the Illithids, but soon deemed that travel
the Illithids? I recognize. Is there like a Magic the Gathering card of these things? Like these squid people? Wait, hold up. Illithid. Yeah! This is a Magic the Gathering thing. Wait, hold up. Illithid MTG. I have this card back in the day. I didn't know a lot about like magic lore, but I used to play the game. Yeah, I had this guy. I had this dude. Illithid dude. How did I remember that name? That's crazy. Oh my god. That's insane. Bro, that's crazy. All right, anyway. Magic the Gathering owns D&D, so they have a lot of crossover. Oh, that's cool. I didn't know that. All right. That's dope. Yeah, so maybe we'll do Illithid for our next creature lore dive. Our most recent one was Mimics, and they're crazy.
Other worlds was dangerous and unprofitable, so they refocused on Faerun instead.
Based.
You know, the more I read Spelljammer stuff, I really want to run a...
Dude, that is so cool. It is so cool that the ship is like built in the shape of like an ammonite.
Fantasy Star Trek game exploring planets. Maybe someday. The lifting of mountains and all of this magical research took its toll on the Weave, and soon some creatures known as the Faerun noticed, and the Faerun lived in the Underdark beneath the land.
Look, man, do not use this for what you want to use it for. I know everyone in my chat is thinking the same thing right now. Do not stick it in. Do not put it in.
End of Netheril. They're really an odd-looking race of sorcerers. They resemble upright
Those
cones.
are sorcerers?
with a barbed stinger tail and like an odd mouth full of teeth. Now, the Farum are ambitious and malicious neutral evil creatures that work.
Farum. All right, I'm just curious. I just want to look this up. Is there like a video on the Farum specifically? Farum D and D. I wrote that like an idiot. D and D lore. Let's see. Yo, that's crazy. There's so much. There's so many creatures. All right, we got to do this.
Worked only for their own individual causes. They delight in bringing pain to others and would gladly erase all other beings from existence if they had the choice.
Yeah, that doesn't sound good actually at all. I'm not gonna lie. That sounds really bad. Leech wizards.
Unfortunately, they also like having slaves, so it's a hard conflict with them.
Yeah.
Now, unbeknownst to the
on the one hand, you want to wipe out all of reality. On the other hand, you like slaves. Look, I get it. I totally get I get it, man.
Netherese, all their magical usage was destroying the underground home of the Farum. So in retaliation, the Farum developed a spell that drained the life from the Netherese lands, which then transformed Low Netheril into the desert of Anorak. This was a slow process, and the Netherese didn't look too much into it at first, simply flying their city to another area to then grow crops there. But as the plague followed their floating city, they soon realized that there was a malicious force at work. The dead lands underneath the floating city caused the Netherese difficulty in feeding their people, and the enemy finally showed itself when the Farum developed spells to bring down several floating cities. Now, the Netherese fought back, but over the course of many years, the Farum destroyed most of the vegetation in Netheril.
Damn!
And turned the land into a great desert, scattering...
So you got a couple of these creepy-looking lich wizards down there on the bottom, and they're just slowly poisoning the actual food supply of this boundless, glorious nation of floating island.
The people who lived there. Eventually, the Netherese turned to using the Sharn to combat the Farum, which worked surprisingly well, shifting the battle to more equal footing. Next, we're going to discuss Karsus. Karsus was born in negative 696 DR, and
there's too many characters and people. This is crazy.
Will become known as the greatest arch-wizard of Netheril. He was able to cast his first spell at age 2, and by age 22, he became the youngest arcanist to create a floating city. He pushed all magical boundaries because magic came so easy for him. He was often credited with having the power but not the discipline behind it. He created a school for magic in his floating city that encouraged new radical thinking and taboo projects. Now, at this school, they discovered and explored the Shadow Plane, which at this time was a plane of existence that coexisted with the Prime Material Plane. It's not the Shadowfell. Shar manipulates the Plane of Shadow later on to create the Shadowfell, but Karsus and his followers studied it and found an infinite source of shadow creatures for slave labor, as well as a dumping ground for unwanted garbage. In negative 339 DR...
There's too many characters. Like, I can't even keep up. I feel like I need to do the creatures first. I'm not gonna lie. I feel like I gotta do the creatures before the actual setting lore, just because there's so many things. So Karsus is a arch-wizard guy, apparently.
Karsus cast a spell that he had been working on for years. His goal was to gain enough power to destroy the Farum. He truly felt...
Makes sense. The Farum are the arch enemy that's poisoning your people. That makes sense.
That Netheril's future rested on his shoulders. With the war with the Farum and just how powerful he was, he wanted to fix it all. The spell was called Karsus' Avatar, and it would steal the power of a deity and transfer it to the caster. Now, Karsus cast this spell with Mistral in mind, as he thought she was the most powerful deity and the most appropriate for his purposes. This event...
Bro, we gotta do the deities. Nah, this is just an endless universe. Wow, I'm excited to dive into this, man.
Of him casting the spell became known as Karsus' Folly. The second after casting the spell, Karsus, his body swelled with godly power and his mind was filled with unimaginable knowledge. And with that knowledge, he realized that he had made the biggest mistake of his life. Stealing that much power from Mistral hurt the weave greatly. All magical effects were doubled for a short time, and ultimately the weave was going to be destroyed. So in an effort to save the weave, Mistral sacrificed herself into the weave to rebuild it. Doing that broke the link with Karsus, turning him to stone, and also caused all magic everywhere to cease functioning. Instantly, all the Netherese floating cities came crashing to the ground, killing their inhabitants.
All right. So they have this epic floating city, the most unbelievable, fantastic civilization ever created, floating around, entering different worlds. And because of these Farum, these absolute degenerate wizard leech fucks that just start poisoning them just because they want to destroy shit, this guy, this arch wizard Karsus, a wizard that is so unbelievably powerful that we've never understood someone quite as powerful as him. He has created a spell so strong, harnessing the power of a god, to wipe out these Farum that have been torturing their people. But it was such a powerful spell, it manipulated the magic warp of this universe, which is the weave, to the point that all magic stopped. And magic is what kept the island floating. So the entire magic floating civilization crashed onto Earth, genociding his own people. That is one of the most tragic stories I have ever heard. Oh my god, we gotta do a full deep dive on Karsus. I feel like that guy's gotta be a radically cool character.
Mistral was then reincarnated as Mistra, and her first priority was to recreate the weave. In recreating the weave, she established new rules of magic.
Right, so that's a new deity. So he literally changed the game. His spell was so powerful, a god needed to step in and change the rules of the universe. Dude, that's pretty diabolical.
No spell above 10th level would ever function. Mistra was able to save 3 of Netheril's floating cities. Uriah, Azram, and Holondath were high enough.
3 little cities survived, but ultimately Netheril came crashing down. This is a crazy story.
Above the ground to survive the long fall before Mistra was able to recreate magic. The 4th city to survive was Thultanthar, which was pulled into the plane of shadow for protection. Now, priests and priestesses of the new goddess of magic were told the story of Karsus in dreams and visions when they prayed for spells. It was Mistra's attempt to make sure that nothing like this would ever happen again. Within a few short months, the inhabitants of the surviving 3 cities left, fearful of the Farum, the gods, and the orcs, and about 1/3 migrated northward, with the rest traveling south to create homes for the surviving floating cities. It was the beginning of the end, and within 300 years, the Netherese were gone from history altogether, reabsorbed into other cultures, and just kind of vanished, leaving behind quasi-magical relics. I really like this story, and I hope that you guys can use it in some dungeon that you run your players through. Perhaps this dungeon is a fallen Netheril city.
That's crazy.
Where you walk on the walls because it fell on its side, and traps would be hilarious if a pit opens up sideways, giving clues to the players as to what might have actually happened. Like, why is this whole ruined city on its side? Or maybe they run into the stone body of Karsus himself. I mean, that is the fun of Forgotten Realms, is once you have this bit of history, you can mold it and shape it into your game.
That is so
which
cool.
is exactly
That
what
is
Wizards
so
of the
sick.
Coast wants you to do. And honestly, another reason that I started making these videos, so that players and DMs can have that background setting to influence their games. Well, that's it for today.
That was awesome. That was amazing. Holy, that was really, really good. I feel like I gotta do the creatures first, because I feel like the creatures will give me so much more appreciation of the history to understand the creatures. But I'm down to do both at the same time. So I think that the next few creatures I do deep dives into are going to be the Illithid, right? Which are those like squid creatures from other dimensions, as well as the Farum, you know, those wizard leech creatures that toppled an entire empire. I'm also down for Karsus. I want to do a dive into Karsus specifically. I feel like this is a really good way to go about absorbing all the lore. So thank you so much for being here. Appreciate you guys. Let me know what future ones you want me to do, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye. Like, subscribe, and this video was streamed live on kick.com/Nuxanor. See you there. Stay weird, fam.